The IMG Roadmap is the only podcast dedicated to coaching international medical graduates in success blueprints for this unique pathway. I am Dr. Nina Loom, your host, a previous IMG turned hospital medicine physician, healthcare administrator, speaker, and coach. I empower, encourage, and equip you with actionable steps that you can take towards the residency position of your dreams. Hello, guys, and welcome to another episode of the IMG Roadmap podcast. Today's guest is another great Instagram blogger, physician, pediatrician. It looks like she does some ER work as well. She's a mom, she's a writer, she's an educator, and she loves to merge her love for medicine and education on the internet. Her name is Dr. Kiruka Orajiaka. She's from Nigeria, and I would love for her to introduce herself and tell us more about her. Welcome on the show, Dr. Orajiaka. Can you tell us a little bit about you?
Hi, Nina. This is so great. Happy to be here with you. You are doing an amazing job, by the way, before I go on introducing myself. So I'm in Kiruka, like you said. Not many people know how to pronounce my name, but you did great. And yes, I am Nigerian. I'm a mom of three, two boys and a girl. And I had an MPH first before I went on to do my residency. And I've been post-residency for the past, I think, 2.5 years now. So I've been an attending for the past 2.5 years. I am not PEM fellowship trained, but I love the ER. So I've been working in the ER for 2.5 years now. It is really awesome. So that's it so far.
That's awesome. So you are a pediatric emergency physician. That's correct. Is that right?
Yeah. So I'm a pediatrician. So in emergency, you have like people that are PEM fellowship trained, meaning after pediatric residency, they still do another 3 years of fellowship. I have not done fellowship, so I'm still working as a pediatrician and we can still work in the ED. So that's what I do.
Okay. Awesome. That's pretty interesting. So just for those who don't know, is emergency medicine one of the fellowship opportunities that a pediatrician can specialize in?
Yes, it is. It's definitely one of them. It's one you can do for another 3 years, and then you get trained in terms of like trauma-based training, more critical care. So yes, it's an extra 3 years, but it's fun. So I haven't done that one yet, hopefully soon, but yes.
That is so awesome. Congratulations. So, on the show, we like to talk about IMGs, the IMG struggle, what you've been through, and how we as IMGs can learn from your story. So can you tell us a little bit about where you went to medical school and transitioned into the U.S. medical system?
Okay. So I actually went to medical school in Nigeria. It's University of Nigeria in Nsukka. And I'm an old graduate. I graduated in 2006. And usually in Nigeria, when you graduate, you do 1 year of what we call internship, like housemanship. And then after that, you go ahead and do what we call the youth service. So I finished my medical school in 2006 and then did my internship between 2007 and 2008. I had a baby in between, so I had an additional 3 months after that. And then went ahead to do my youth service.
Wow, that's awesome. So before even transitioning to the States, you had some clinical experience as far as doing your youth service and additional work after medical school. Is that right?
Yeah. We usually don't have that experience. So my route is a bit different because I didn't come in and do residency immediately. So after my youth service, which is basically when we work for 1 year, maybe in an undeveloped setting, and I did mine in a community hospital for 1 year. And after that, I decided to do my master's in public health. So I came into the U.S. then between 2009 and 10 and did that for 1 year in Columbia University in New York. But because I had kids, I was not willing to stay here for longer because my kids were back home in Nigeria with my mom and my husband. So it was really a struggle having to stay here longer than that. So I was so eager to be done with the master's. So I moved back to Nigeria after that and then worked for another 4 years between 2010 and 14. And that was the time I used to start taking my exams and then decide to come back and do residency between 2014 and 17.
Wow, that's amazing. So really, when you said that story, the one thing that stood out to me is, and I get this question a lot, is I'm an old grad, doc. What are some recommendations that you have for me? A lot of people fear being an old grad. The old grad definition really varies, but it's usually for people that maybe have graduated more than 4 or 5 years, actually anywhere from 3 to 5 years since medical school graduation who are applying into residency. So do you have any advice or an answer to that question? How does a person that considers themselves an old grad, how do they fit in or how do they become equally competitive?
So I think it's something about a mindset. My over the past year and two, I've been reading a lot of books. So it's about a mindset. If you set your mind that you want to do something, people that are younger than you, older than you, will not see anything differently. So if you're putting yourself, I'm an old graduate, I can't do this, I already have the challenges to face, then deep inside you, you're already seeing a struggle that you can't overcome. So even when I did residency, I was one of the oldest people in my residency, but they really didn't know the difference that I was older. So it's a matter of how you think about it. This is your goal. This is what you want to accomplish. And you can put a timeline on it and you know you can achieve it. So we respect the finishing after all the things I did. And I think another thing is that being able to remember to do things in between. So I did a master's in public health, which everyone does not have to do. Like if you're still back home after a medical school, trying to make sure you're getting involved with like either you're working or doing some charity work or you're doing some volunteer work, you're doing something medical or something non-medical, but something you know that's interesting enough for you to give back, or whenever you end up coming for interviews, to make sure you always mention that that's something that sparks interest to your interviewers. So just a whole couple of things. But I would say starting from the mindset to know being an old grad will not be a limitation. It's just something that happened that you can still get to your aim from that.
Right. That's a very great point. I think it all starts with the mindset. Like Tony Robbins says, success is 80% psychology and 20% strategy.
Definitely.
So 80% mindset, 20% planning. So really thank you for bringing that point up. Now, another question, actually, this was today. I received a message on Instagram from a person in Nigeria. And that person was asking, how do I get to be able to do residency in the States? I mean, very briefly, I know your story, like you said, you had this diverse experience of getting an MPH in the meantime at a great institution like Columbia University, but then eventually moving back to Nigeria before even pursuing the steps. And I want you to kind of talk about that a little later. But this question came to my inbox today, and this person said, hey, I'm in Nigeria. I really want to do residency in the States. Do you have any advice? Can you guide me? It's very broad, but if you were answering that question to that person, what would you say?
So I think, first of all, we'll start with doing the research, knowing what are the exams. There are 3 basic exams you need to take: step 1, step 2, step 3, and knowing that these are the exams you have to take. Second is knowing when to take what. So you have to plan yourself. I did mine a little bit differently, having that I've been out of medical school a little longer. I knew the anatomy and physiology might take me a little longer to take. So I decided to take step 2 CK, which is more clinical. So because you don't have to, as long as you complete all the steps before you take step 3, that's fine. So I decided to do step 2 CK first, because it was easier for me to study. And then after that, I did step 1 and then step 2 CS and step 3 just towards when I started getting interviews. And I would say, first of all, reach out to people, know what books are fine, which is great to study. I mean, I used first aid at the time. And then you can also do research online to get a few more things you can use to do the exam. So like UWorld, and I think you know most of these things more than I do. But step 3, and then also believe the Kaplan books, those are really ones that I use too. I don't know if that answers the question you wanted, but that's basically knowing which of the steps to take and when to take it. And thereafter, I had a friend here that I always consulted all the time, because then in between, when you start taking the exams and getting towards when to apply, you start getting a little bit confused. What do you need to get? How many letters? Who do you need to reach out to? How do you apply for interviews? So I would say when you're doing all this, never forget to reach out to someone and ask a question, because then you don't want to miss a step, knowing fully well when you go in that you can't go back anymore if you make any mistakes. So that's what I will recommend.
Yeah. I agree 100%. When I took the test as well, I used mostly Kaplan resources and USMLE World and first aid. I do realize, though, that these days there's so many new options on the market, like Pathoma, Osmosis. There's some other ones out of the channel. There's just so many resources. And I'm sure they're great. Sketchy Micro and all these things. I've heard great reviews from them, even when I used to have medical students, 3rd and 4th years that rotated with me as part of their core clerkship for internal medicine. So they all raved about those things, but I don't have a personal experience with those services. But, I always say this, that the medical knowledge is the same as far as whether you use Kaplan or whether you use Osmosis or whether you use something else. It's really just focusing on the high yield material and then learning how to take the standardized test, because USMLE World or USMLE in general, It's one of those standardized tests that if you're coming in from a different culture, different society, and you're not familiar with those multiple choice questions, that alone can fail you. So
Yeah.
a lot of practice, a lot of discussion, and speaking with people who have done it really goes a long way.
Yes. And I think one of the anxiety is when you have the international medical graduates is thinking that the workload is going to be a lot. And I agree with you. Maybe you can do a little bit of the reading and go into the USMLE world. Just kind of get a feel of how the questions are asked. Because in medicine, you are never ready for an exam. So avoiding trying to push it back, think you will never be ready. You are ready. So you just have to put your mind that you want to do this and do a whole lot more questions to help you revise like the how you want that you really need to know.
Right. I agree with you. I'm certainly in agreement there. So, let's go back to your personal journey. Can you walk us through, studying for the boards? Did you do that in Nigeria? Did you do it here?
I did all my studying from Nigeria. I moved back in 2010 and I decided to start studying for the exam probably beginning of 2011. That was when I took the step 2 CK like I told you about. And this was, because we don't take the exams in Nigeria, we usually take it in Ghana. So we have to travel to Ghana for that. So my step 2 CK was first. I don't remember the exact month, but that was in 2011. And towards the end of the year, I did step 1. So step 1 I actually went for the exam twice. And this was not because I failed it, but this was because, funny thing, like halfway, like maybe 30 minutes to the end of the exam, something with the electricity happened. So it shut down. So I had to go back again for the second time. But the way God works, this was actually because I felt like if I had gone the first time, maybe I wasn't ready for the exam. But I took step 1 eventually the second time, and that came out. And then in 2012, I came to Atlanta, which is where you always have to take step 2 CS in the US. And that was when I took step 2 CS.
Okay.
And then I believe step 3 was just around some interviews in end of 2013.
Yeah. So let's talk about this whole thing that happened during step 1. So because you had an electrical problem, did the board examiners allow you to retake the test? Is that how it happened?
Yes.
Did you have to go through any loops to get that corrective action?
So they didn't even grade it. It just shut down. So everyone that was there to take any different exam was basically, so sorry, you have to go back again and register. So they said I have to wait. And after, I think I waited for like a day or two, or maybe like a week. And USMLE sent me an email, said I have to register this and do this all over again. I didn't have to pay anything extra because it wasn't my fault. I just had to register for a different day and go back to Ghana and take it.
So that was corrected within a short time frame?
Yes, it was. It was definitely corrected.
Okay. So the reason I ask is if somebody ever experiences that, even though it's very rare, I've never heard of it.
Yeah.
They know that it's fixable. It's not the end of the world, basically.
Yes. And one thing I learned from you, actually, like I left the exam, was, how these exams are like 7 hours long, and it was 30 minutes to the end. The lady remembered me when I came back the second day. She said, I actually remember you because you were so angry. And, I felt like if someone remembers me for being angry, that wasn't a really good thing. But then how we are humans. And I told her, well, I'm happy I came back the second time, because it felt like the second time was actually when I felt like I was more ready to take this. So it's like a lesson. It happens for a reason. God knows why. The second time might be the best time, or the second or the third time.
Right. So as a person that has, trained in pediatrics, you've definitely had a lot of exposure with your personal residency program. And, there's other people that are aspiring to match into peds. What would you say is, the score goal for them? Is there a particular target you want them to create for themselves that would ease their way in? Are there specific things that they need to be doing? Observerships, do those have a role? Letters? Can you touch a little bit on that?
In terms of USMLE, in terms of the exam itself, I'm not sure. I mean, it depends on where you're applying. I'm not sure the score is everything because, honestly, I think my step 1 was a 198 and everything else is above 200. So I wouldn't say the score is everything. I think other things that they look at is in terms of what are you doing? Because as of the time I did my interview, I was already doing some health work in terms of the same education through mobile phone in Nigeria. So I think it's an additional thing you're doing that you're willing to talk about. So like I mentioned, if you're volunteering, like every single thing you think is interesting enough, it's a matter of you bringing it to the interview. But I think also even when you do your RS applications and what you fill out, just be detailed enough, because you might think, oh, that thing I did for a week in some hospital doesn't count. Every single thing counts because you don't know what people are looking at. Different programs look at different things. So bring every single thing to the table. Take your time and do your homework. Every single thing you've done, list it down. So that way it helps on your interview. Getting an interview to start with, because then this is you submitting the paperwork that no one sees you before they call you for the interview. So that helps. And then in terms of coming for the interview itself, I'm not sure, is this something we're going to talk about differently, or you just want me to talk about that too now?
Yeah. So, I mean, you can touch a little bit on the interview process, or even what we're really looking for is any valuable information that you have for us IMGs who are trying to get to where you're at. So nothing is too much, nothing is too little. But the things that I know that the audience of this podcast really want to know is, what else can I be doing? How can I get an observership for peds? How can I get some U.S. clinical experience? How can I get some strong LORs? How do you get your own LORs? Can you touch on those types of topics?
So when I did my interview, I had to, one of my sisters, I think it was my sister-in-law, was in peds. So that's how I got my observership in the U.S. Because I know some people might be looking at like big programs. You may not necessarily be able to get into big hospitals. At that time, he was working in a clinic, but then he had privileges in the hospital. So I basically went to his pediatrics clinic on the days. And then one of the days we went into the hospital. So I think it's a matter of being able to get any opportunity you can, like emailing people, reaching out to friends and ask, hey, do you know anyone that can help me get an observership? And I remember then I emailed like some programs in Colombia or some programs in New York, and they said they didn't have anything available. I'm not sure if this has to do with like having to file for malpractice or something at that time. I'm not sure why they said no, but I was able to do only one observership, which I did actually when I came in for my step 3 exam. So that helps. And before I applied. So I think it's just reaching out to people. Nothing is too small. No area is too small. Don't always aspire to do like the big hospitals if you're not getting those. So that's what I think is important. And I ended up being able to get just one LOR from the same person that did that for me. And then the other one I got for my master's in public health, and the other one was one from Nigeria. So I think even if you're not able to get all your LORs from the US, that's okay. And just be able to reach out to people that can confidently write something interesting for you, if it's in the US or in Nigeria too.
That's another thing that I get. I have people thinking that their LOR should only come from US faculty. Granted, yes, US faculty is great. You should have maybe 1 or 2 from them, but you can always solicit letters from the dean of your medical college, whatever country you're in, or other faculty that know you really well and can vouch for you that, meet that criteria. So I think
definitely.
That's a good point that you pointed out. Another thing that I wanted to just touch on a little bit, and I think this came up a little bit earlier in the conversation, was in regards to your Master's of Public Health degree. This is another thing that comes up frequently in the IMG community. Do we need to have an added master's degree to make ourselves more competitive, to be looked upon for residency admission? What are your thoughts on that?
So I don't think so, because I have a friend who actually went ahead to do a master's in London, hoping it was going to help her with her applications. And she went the second time around, and she actually did not get interviews. So I think it does. I wouldn't say it's an added thing. Maybe some people do went ahead to use it and do different things. Maybe it's a matter of what's the extra thing you use your MPH to do that may be very attractive to them. Because some people do it just to get the interviews, and maybe they don't end up using it or doing anything else interesting. And that becomes like an additional payment you have to do for nothing. So I would not agree with it being like a highly praised thing if you're not using it to do anything else interesting.
Right. So you would not recommend for people to pursue additional degrees just for the simple purpose of making themselves appear more appealing to a program?
No, I will not.
Okay. That's great information there. So, just some final words for, up and coming students or graduates. Any last words of advice?
So I would say no time is too, what do they call it? You're never too old to do it. If that's something you believe deep down that you really wanted to, it's just a matter of believing that you can do it and knowing fully well that you can reach. I mean, fully well, when people start wanting to apply for residency, they tell you they reach out to so many people, nobody responds. But I believe if you email and reach out to 100 people, keep making cold calls, one person will respond to you, and that's fine. You can also share my email address or my Instagram. I might not be able to get you interviews. I might be able to tell you what to do to make yourself more attractive, but always kind of believing that you can do it. And also do your research, because every time I went for interviews, I stayed online to Google every single person, because then you're not sure who is going to interview you. You don't want to show up and you don't realize who the program director is. You're not even sure what the program stands out for. So I think that's one other thing I recommend. Always do your research and homework, knowing fully well, once you walk into this place, you can either make yourself shine and be extraordinary if you're able to, like, maybe talk about the person interviewing. Oh, I know you did this research. I know this program is great with this. Can you tell me more? Because they will ask you, do you have any questions? And those are the questions they remember. Or if there are so many things, like certain things you may say that will make them remember you. So always do your research.
Right. I agree. Now, you said that we can reach out to you on social. Can you tell us your Instagram handle or your blog handle?
So my Instagram is Dr.Norajiaka. That's basically my first initial and my last name. And that's Instagram.
All right, guys, you heard her. I'll put her information in the show notes as well, so you can follow her and ask her all the questions you have in regards to pediatrics. Thank you so much, Dr. Orajiaka. We appreciate having you on the podcast. We hope you have a great, wonderful evening.
Thanks, Nina. It's been amazing talking to you today. You're doing an amazing job, by the way. It's awesome. You're doing an amazing job.
Thank you so much for saying that. We're just here trying to inspire, empower, encourage, and equip IMGs. Thank you. This episode is sponsored by the IMG Roadmap e-course. The IMG Roadmap e-course is a step-by-step program that is geared to guiding international medical graduates on how to go from simple IMG to becoming a U.S. resident physician. You can check us out at imgroadmap.com.